Hello, this is Washington Unplugged. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. President Obama is still said to be deciding whether to authorize sending an additional 40,000 troops to Afghanistan. With the backdrop of an increase in violence in Pakistan and Afghanistan, we take a look at the road ahead now with Imran Ahmad Kahn. He's president of the Transnational Crisis Project. In a nutshell, I know this is difficult. What is the Transnational Crisis Project?
The Crisis Project strives to produce policy recommendations to leaders around the world in order to address transnational security issues, be that terrorism or the national security implications of climate change or infectious disease.
Now, I know you want to talk about Pakistan, and we will in just a minute, but first, can you remind us in simple terms for people who haven't been following this as closely as you have, what is the terror connection in Afghanistan?
I think, first of all, Afghanistan is suffering an insurgency that never needed to happen. The oxygen of that insurgency is being provided at the moment from Pakistan, from militant bases, Al-Qaeda and Taliban bases in Pakistan, which then allow people to move across into Afghanistan to frustrate America and her allies' interests to promote stability and eventually prosperity for the whole region.
What is the tie between Pakistan and Afghanistan that allows them to move with some freedom between the two?
Along the border areas known as the Durand Line, there is the world's largest tribal population, known as Pathans or Pashtuns. They inhabit both sides, so there is strong familial ties and cultural ties between both sides of what is, in fact, a British creation, almost an imaginary line that divides two people who are, in fact, one.
Do you think the roots of what's going on in Afghanistan, therefore, really come from Pakistan?
The roots of what's going on in Afghanistan right now are very complex. They stem from many, many causes and reasons. The solution, however, is found in Pakistan. Pakistan is unlike Afghanistan or Iraq before it. Let me put it into stark terms. Iraq had a population of 20-odd million. Afghanistan has 30-odd million. Both weak states, poor armies, poor infrastructure. Pakistan, on the other hand, has a population in excess of 170 million, an army larger than that of the United States, an arsenal of nuclear weapons, and the home of the most noxious, virulent, perverted form of Salafist Wahhabi Deobandi Islam. It's also a truly transnational issue, which affects the security of Americans and America's interests and allies around the world because of their vast diaspora community. We have seen this experience in the United Kingdom, for instance. Elements of the diaspora community from Pakistan have proven to be prone to radicalization. You saw this in London, Leeds, Dewsbury, and Glasgow. That's why it's absolutely necessary for our future security to sort out the issues and to bring prosperity and stability to Pakistan. It's of an entirely different magnitude.
All right, before we talk about maybe some specifics as to what we could do there, what do you think about the idea for adding 40,000 more troops to Afghanistan? Is that part of the equation of what, in your view, has to be done?
I believe that the stability needs to be brought to Afghanistan. We need to look at all options of how we can best ensure stability is brought. People ask in this country often, it's not our war, why are we there? I say very categorically, it is in the interests of the American people and her allies to succeed in Afghanistan. At the moment, the reason that we are frankly losing is because of the policies that were followed previously. President Obama and his stellar A-list cast of principals, Vice President Biden, Secretary Clinton, and indeed Ambassador Holbrooke, I am sure are grappling with a very complex situation and will bring out in time a set of policies that will be able to deal with what is a very serious problem.
One quick question, one longer one. We only have a little bit of time left. But what makes you say we're failing? Because things have gotten, some people say, worse. We haven't made fast, measurable improvements.
The center of gravity with all effective counterinsurgency campaigns is the population. We have yet to effectively embrace the populations in Pakistan or in Afghanistan. The Taliban have not just produced a terrorist force, but an alternative system of governance, courts, markets, justice. That is something we have to prove and show there is a viable alternative to.
Okay, and last question. You get to be chief strategist for the United States for the purposes of this program. What are a couple of concrete steps that you think should be taken, something that's not being done right now that would help?
First of all, the Westphalian system, the old system of states dealing with states, is much less relevant today than 60 years ago. Such issues such as transnational terrorism will not be solved solely by Washington, Islamabad, Kabul. You need to engage the populations. Also, one has to be agile. Within Pakistan, we have a difficult situation in that there are elements of state infrastructure, such as the ISI and elements of the military, that are actually trying to frustrate America and her allies' policies. Only elements. We need to actually embrace them and let them realize that their success, their country's security, is wedded to our own. And their security means that they must actually come on side.
And how do you do that? I mean, we have a campaign to win the hearts and minds. I don't know if that's, if that's part of it.
We have an idea that we need to win the hearts and minds. Effectively doing it is much more difficult. To do that, you need to know on a granular basis, village to village, what levers to press, how to actually embrace the populations. For example, a Pakhtun in Khyber, at the gateway of the Khyber Pass, will actually call a Pakhtun 50 miles down the road in Kurram a foreigner. Now, the Taliban are fabulously brilliant at actually identifying local problems and exploiting them and providing narratives to the people on the ground. For instance, when I was in Di Khan speaking to Khalifa Abdul Qayyum, who's the head of a terrorist group there, he was going on and on about healthcare provision. When I am in Swat and one speaks to members of the Taliban there, they talk about access to justice. They're not talking about religious ideologies. They're talking about needs to the people. We need to understand those narratives and combat them and provide real alternatives to the population.
Thanks so much. Very interesting, and you explained it really well. Imran Ahmad, Kahn, president of the Transnational Crisis Project.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Now, on to another topic. Joining us from our bureau is former U.S. Senator from Georgia and Vietnam veteran Max Cleland. He's out with a new book called The Heart of a Patriot, How I Found the Courage to Survive Vietnam, Walter Reed and Karl Rove. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
For those who aren't familiar, could you please recount what happened with that grenade explosion in Vietnam? Because that's really the beginning of this story in a way.
Yeah, in many ways it is. What happens to you in war continues in your life. You're able to overcome it, you're able to deal with it. But whether you're on the ground in Iraq or Afghanistan or Pakistan or whatever, or Vietnam, you carry the war with you and you bring it home. That's the message that I got out of all of this. Basically, I was getting off a helicopter and a young man who was brand new in country had loosened the pins on his grenades. One fell off on the ground. I was involved in breaking the siege of Khe Sanh, a signal moment in American history, and we were able to break that siege. But I reached for the grenade. I didn't know it was live. I reached for it with my right hand and it blew up. So I'm lucky to be here in many ways. I was in Walter Reed in 1968, and then I went back with a severe depression, basically due to post-traumatic stress disorder, or what I call post-war disorder, in terms of stress and anxiety, back in the 2003 when I lost my race for the Senate in 2002.
Well, let's remind people what happened in between the two Walter Reed stints. You were a Vietnam veteran, of course. You were the first Vietnam veteran in the Georgia State Senate. You became head of the VA under President Carter, and you became a U.S. Senator. And then there was this nasty re-election which you lost. And is that the tipping point in a way for you? Do you feel that drove you back into the post-traumatic stress situation?
Yes, because I had, through my life, most of my adult life, been very fortunate to be involved in public service, public life, and my elections carried me through. And being appointed head of the VA by President Carter carried me through. It was my way of coping. What I found after losing in 2002 was, and the cranking up of the Iraq War, threw me right back in war. I experienced it. I went through it again. I wound up with massive anxiety and wound up with massive PTSD at Walter Reed again. In terms of my counseling, I've been there for several years. All hearkening back to the original sense of being blown up, laying there on the battlefield, bleeding and dying, and with a powerful sense of powerlessness and hopelessness.
How did you pull out of it? I know you did, as you say, you spent a lot of time with Walter Reed, and you were exposed to some of today's veterans going through similar traumas.
Yeah, not only are they going through similar traumas, war is war, but to feel that your war is increasingly meaningless, and that your muddy boots on the ground, so to speak, are not producing the result that you hoped they would produce, that compromises your readjustment in any case. But yes, I wound up back in Walter Reed 40 years later dealing with my own stuff from my war with the veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. I want to thank the gentleman for making the focus Pakistan rather than Afghanistan. In many ways, our issue is with Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is in Pakistan. Bin Laden is probably there. Al-Qaeda Central is there. Those are the targets that we need to go after. That is our military objective, to kill or capture them. Now, when you're in the swamp, you forget that your real purpose is to kill the alligators. That is really Afghanistan and Pakistan for me in a nutshell.
You brought it up. A quick comment on, do you think 40,000 additional troops is the way to go in Afghanistan?
If it's still for counterinsurgency, no. But if it's to train the Afghans to help defend their own country against the Taliban, yes. I wouldn't add necessarily more troops in Afghanistan. What I would do is shift the focus from counterinsurgency, which is strategically a defensive strategy, to an offensive strategy, counterterrorism in Pakistan, working with the Pakistanis. We are on the same team, the United States, NATO, and the Pakistani government and its people, in effect defending that country, defending their nuclear weapon program, and going after Al-Qaeda. That's what we should be all about.
All right, and hopefully we have time to address two tidbits from your book that I wanted to get to. One of the juicier points, some would say, is a former aide of yours was in the same intern class as Monica Lewinsky. Tell me if I've got this right. He claims he was used as a cover of sorts to get her into the White House during her affair with President Clinton. How'd you find out about that? Did I describe it correctly?
You described it correctly. And my friend Trey Ragsdale, who was my staffer, I did not know he was really president of that internship class until the White House internship class, until later, till the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke out. But then he was used, quite frankly, to get her from the executive office building into the West Wing. And then they say, as they say, the rest is history.
Were you kind of horrified by that, or by?
Yeah, I was shocked by it. I mean, first of all, I was shocked by the whole thing. But I didn't realize that a dear friend of mine had been a beard or a cover for Monica as she wanted to get into the West Wing.
All right, another thing that you've written about in your book is you say you came down with mononucleosis after Senator Pete Domenici would not allow you to wear a green scarf around your neck on the Senate floor. What happened?
Oh, well, I came down with mononucleosis and I didn't know it. I was freezing. And I was trying to get warm, and so I was wearing some kind of green scarf, and a friend of mine said that violates Senate decorum. So, you know, that's the way the Senate is sometimes.
Did you ever get an apology from him?
No, I don't need an apology from him.
All right, and would you lastly explain the part of your title? You've explained pretty much so far the part about Vietnam and Walter Reed, but how I found the courage to survive Karl Rove.
Yeah.
What does that refer to?
It means that when you have weak positives, as Karl Rove had, and usually has when he represents the right-wing candidates, then when they go up against somebody that has real military service, like McCain, me, or Kerry, then his strategy is not just to run negative character assassination ads, but to go after that military service. That crosses the line. As Chuck Hagel once told me, former senator from Nebraska, who was a fellow Vietnam veteran, wounded, said to me, some things are more important than politics. And one of those things is military service. It should be left alone in a campaign. If you have it, you have it. If you don't have it, you don't have it. And the voters will make a judgment.
Well, thank you very much. And on a personal note, my husband is a former Vietnam Army combat veteran, and I'm sure he would thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for joining us. That's it for Washington Unplugged. Thanks for watching. You can find us here, and more of you are every day at 12:30 on CBSNews.com. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Hope you have a great day, and be sure to catch my Follow the Money reports on the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.